Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about regression testing. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, do software engineering teams run regression tests when the code is committed to the repository, or do they run it only when the code is merged to the master branch? Well, I would say it depends on the team. Some people don't even do regression testing because all companies are different. That's why I like to tell people who ask me about testing and so forth. Before you start writing a bunch of tests and doing all this stuff, it's always good to do some orientation in your company to sort of check the waters, like what level of testing do they want. I've made that mistake many times, so take it from me. Guys, do not start your first day by telling people how bad everything they do is and like how to just write better tests or do mob coding and so forth and so forth. Most people are well, let's just say that if you're not seeing a certain level of quality in the work process, it's most likely because of a reason. So you have to sort of check it out first, and then you can come with some suggestions when you've figured out what the lay of the land is. Because, as I said, some people write tests and some don't, and some people have basically a regression test either after it's in master or before. Now, of course, in my personal opinion, the solution here is to do, well, if you can only do one, then you should do it before you merge to master, because usually when the code is in master, well, then by that time, depending on how your deployment strategy is, you can basically be in a state where your code can be released without without the thing passing, unless you have like a release schedule, which you can have as well, which is another way of doing it. So an example would be if you have a continuous delivery process where you don't really do like cycled releases or anything like that, then it's a very good thing for you to make sure that you're checking each branch before it goes out, because then as soon as it goes into master, I'm not saying that you have to like instantly deploy as part of your setup, but once something is in master and you don't have a release process, then anyone could in theory release that into production, and then it's broken, right? So then you really want to make sure that it's tested before it goes out. But if, as I said, if you have something like a release process where, let's say, every Tuesday, once a week, the release train goes out, right? In that sort of scenario, then it's not so important. Then you might want to merge to master, and I've worked in processes like that, and that works also really well. You merge to master, and then a day before the release or something like that, you have people who do regression testing on the system, and then if they find no bugs, then they basically freeze the release and then they push it out into production. That sort of strategy. Both of these things have feasibility, and I know that there are popular opinions about ways of doing things. There are so many ideas on how to do releasing in like the most sustainable way. And the thing I like to say is that it very much depends on the problem space. It's hard to say that one is better than the other. The way that I usually do it is, I'm lucky. I'm not working on at least not now. I'm not working on a project that has a need for like a scheduled release. Scheduled releases it's not just a bad thing. Sometimes you actually have to have scheduled releases. A classic one is you're using an international product or something like that where you need translations, etc., etc. That makes it very difficult for you to actually release things whenever you want. But I work in a project where I can run a CI pipeline basically and continuously just push things out into master or push things out into production. As soon as my teammates merge to master, we automatically deploy like immediately. And we had to get to that point through setting some stuff up, which I was very happy to see, because usually when you don't do that, the thing that always happens, which is that like people don't do the release. When you have to ask them to do it, it becomes a chore. But when the people are reluctant to push a button that makes them deploy into master, they forget that a lot of the time, or they are scared of doing it. But when you do it this way, as soon as they merge, it's already done. It's already going out in production for us. And so we have both, basically. We do regression testing in production, and we do regression testing, or rather we're setting that up now. I'm still waiting for our QA to set that up because I've been asking for it for the longest time, and unfortunately in my specific company I cannot do it myself because I am a busy bastard who has a million other things to do, and hopefully I will have less things to do, because unless this gets fixed soon, I will fix it myself, because it is very important that this happens. And so both is the strategy that I recommend, because the reason why I recommend both basically is because I hope we can all agree that it's a good idea for you to, let's say when you create a pull request or something like that, to run the end-to-end test, or like you're running your unit test hopefully as part of your I am not assuming that you're using GitHub or something like that, as part of your pull request. Each time you commit something and push it to your story branch, ideally you should run your tests to make sure that the code is still working. And end-to-end testing is a part of that. And so if you can build and deploy your code and then run the end-to-end test, then you know before you're merging that the thing is working. But at the same time, it's not a good idea, in my opinion at the very least, to skip doing it once it's in master. As I said, for me it's not like when in this scenario I'm talking about, it's not just in master, it's in production. Running your tests in end-to-end test in production is a very good thing, because even if your code was working while you were deploying it and then it made it into master, you have tons of scenarios where the website can actually go down for all kinds of reasons. So it's still good for you to go through and actually check the functionality, because it becomes, to me, an end-to-end test is just it's in many cases a better version of a health check. That's how I look at it. It is like the best health check you can have. It's just that when you're testing in production, you have to be a little bit careful, because you're actually clicking around on things and you might be simulating traffic and so forth. One classic one is that your product people will hate you because all of their metrics, so Google Analytics and stuff like that, go haywire because you have this bot who does everything. And I always tell them the same thing. It's not a problem if you just filter out the IP address of the bot. You don't have to look at that traffic, and then we can actually make sure that the system is working. And then it turns out that they don't even know what that is, which is a classic one, because I have to know, developers need to know practically everything about IT, but the people who are supposed to manage everybody, they don't even need to know the basics of the tools that they depend on in order to be quote-unquote data-driven. So what I want you to take away from this is that, well, if you're asking me if teams are running end-to-end tests or regression tests before or after, I would say it depends on the team. Some teams don't even do regression testing. It depends types of situation. My personal preference is to do it both, if you're using CI or a CD pipeline or something like that, because as I said, you want to practically always run things before, because if you run them before, you know that you shouldn't be merging until this thing passes, and then you want to run it in production as well, is my argument, because anything in production could break at any moment. Your DNS server could be going down, or your a third-party script could be breaking your page. There's tons of stuff that is production specific. So I think testing in production is a very good thing if you know how to do it without a lot of hassle and stuff like that. But as I said, there's also situations where just testing once you merge to master is a perfectly viable solution. A classic one is you have a release process that is you schedule releases or something like that, and then the release only happens after the QA team or whoever does the testing has done their testing, and then they do a freeze and then they release, and which works as well. Have a great day.